Well, today we've got Dhruv and Smit in Columbus, Ohio. And how long you been in the system?
So we first signed the FDD in 2018 October, thinking we'd make a move on the location that we had. Unfortunately, the landlord basically went with another tenant, but fast forward about a year and a half, we went for the same location again and got that and opened in November of 2020. So it's been about two years and 2 months now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll get back to the landlord experience. Why
Yeah.
don't you go ahead and give us a little bit of your background and how you found Teriyaki Madness, why you made the leap, and we'll start there.
Drew, you can go ahead first. You can give your background.
So I graduated in 2017 with a degree in accounting, business accounting. Tried corporate for about 5 years after interning at a company. Ended up not liking how this just just didn't feel corporate wasn't for me. So I asked my parents if they knew any good franchises that they could recommend, and I was looking at I forget what website I was looking at, but it was like I just searched like top franchise businesses, and Teriyaki Madness was one. And then we also had a family friend who already owned one. A guy from Alabama. Uh, was it
Manoj.
Manish? Manoj, yeah. Manoj, he's actually family friend. His partner is actually related to one of our relatives. So my uncle told us about that during Smith's wedding. He was like, "Yeah, you should give this out. Like, check this out," because he knew I was trying to get out of corporate. So I gave it a look, and then I remember going through the calls with Michael, and it was everything sounded great, but I was like, yeah, let's see how the introductory goes, and then after that, like Smith came in, and Smith's background, he can go ahead with that then.
So while we were doing this, my background is basically I went to the same school. I graduated from Ohio State. Got a dual degree in microbiome and finance. And then after graduating, I started as a financial advisor doing investments and all that stuff. When we first opened, we basically tried to do it where one person quit their job. Drew decided he wanted to get out, so he quit his job. And I was gonna try to like manage both things, my job and help at the shop. But then a few months in, I decided that I would go full time at the shop. So I quit my job or paused it, however you want to classify it. And then we began to like basically run the shop full time.
So that's a big leap. You both came from white collar executive corporate jobs,
Yep.
and now you're running a teriyaki shop.
Yep.
So what was the culture kind of whiplash there?
So basically, we come from like a business-minded background, like in terms of family. My parents have owned gas stations for about 25 to 28 years now. So we have that um, business dynamic within the family where whenever my parents need help at the gas station, we would go and run the shop for them. So we kind of had that drilled in our mindset from the get-go. Like, hey, you guys have a business option on the back burner if like corporate isn't working for you guys. So you guys can always get into like a franchise, or if you have like the capability, you can even try to start your own business.
And Dhruv, how about you? What was the eye opener of coming into the restaurant business?
So it was challenging at first. Like, I mean, I understood. We like Smith said, my parents have owned their own business, so we understood like there's going to be a challenge. Like, nothing's just going to be handed to you. Um, so we understood like, hey, it's going to be long hours. Like in the beginning, Smith and I were there, and Smith's wife was also there, basically from open to close. Smith and I would be there from open to close, and then his wife would come in and help after her job, because like during when we opened during COVID, I mean, staffing was an issue. We're like, no one, we couldn't find people to work, and then like people were scared to come to work. So like for us, it was like, well, this is a make it or break it. Like we need to make sure this, and we knew like we were gonna make it because we trusted our gut and we're like, hey, we're not going to let this restaurant fail. Um, but I mean, culture wise, like we try to do the same I mean, I loved my job at like my corporate job because everyone was super flexible and super nice. And there was no micromanaging or anything like that. And so we try to bring that same culture back to TMAD where it's like, hey, we're going to give you these responsibilities. I want you to make sure you can do these responsibilities. And then I'm not going to sit there and be over your shoulder and be like, hey, you're doing this wrong. Or Smith won't be there and be like, you're doing this wrong. In the beginning, I kind of like backtrack and was like, kind of was micromanaging at stuff, but it was more like, hey, we're not doing this in terms of sales. So like, I'm losing money here, like when you mess up here. So, but after that, it took me a little while to be like, all right, back off a little bit, let them learn. Their staff's going to make mistakes. Once they make a mistake, try to coach them rather than just like not yell at them, but like talk down to them. Or like, be like, how do you not know how to do this? So it took me a little bit to be like, okay, people are going to make mistakes. We're going to lose some dollars, but don't worry about the pennies to like worry about the dollar bills.
So it sounds like when you first started off, it was just all in. You were putting in the hours. And did I hear correctly? Your expectations were kind of set by your family's businesses. You knew what it was like to run a small business.
Correct.
Okay. And then the second part that I heard was building a team and kind of teaching yourself how to manage a team. It's maybe
Yeah.
the same. Did you have the same experience of kind of dialing it in?
No, I'm a little bit less like Drew in terms of like management style. I basically want them to make mistakes, want them to grow, learn on their own. So we would set our expectations like, hey, if you're a shift lead, you need to be able to do this, 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 be able to manage employees under you, as well as basically train them to the capability you guys are set at, or however much training that we provided you guys. And then we know like everybody learns at a different pace, or people make mistakes and whatnot. That's basically how they learn and grow. So I never wanted to basically be like, hey, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong. This is the procedure that is said. This is how you guys should be trained. And after that, just leave it up to the employees to learn on their own and basically follow protocol.
So Drew, is your management style more like Smith, or is his now more like yours?
No, I've backed off completely. Now I've given my responsibility to our assistant manager. Um, he runs the whole shop by himself. When we're there, I'm just there to help him. Like I'm like, hey, what do you need? Where do you need me? If you don't need me, I'm just gonna be back here doing stuff on my computer. Um, Here and there, I'll like suggest, like I'll try and coach where I think would be better. Instead of like talking to them and be like, hey, like why can't you get this right? It's been like you've been here for a year. Why can you not get this right yet? I'll just be like, hey, next time let's just try and do this and figure it out.
All right. How about employee challenges? As you're building your team, it sounds like I've seen your team. Your team is terrific. What challenges did you have building it? Do you have any horror stories about employees as you were building up your team?
I mean, team building was Unshu helped a lot. Like he had a lot of kids that he mentored throughout like his tenure as part of the temple. So he brought a lot of kids that he knew were just like 17, 18, 19 looking for work. Barth was one of those kids. I mean, Barth keeps telling us like if Unshu hadn't just applied for him and just made him get the job here, he would have never been a part of TMAD. And now I think we're at the point where Barth is looking to become a partner with us within the next two. So it's kind of like it's a nice story to see like a guy that was not even going to be a part of TMAD has worked his way up to become a partner with us. So we have a lot of 10-year employees. I think our average is like I think a year and 2 months, which is kind of hard to see in like a lot of other food places. Like I've noticed around our location, there's a bagel shop there. The owner, only thing the owner ever tells me every time I see him is like, dude, how do you keep your staff? And I'm like, it's just the small things, man. Like I told him, I was like, our staff really appreciates it when we come in and we're assisting them on everything. And like, they clearly see like, oh, Drew's grilling chicken, Drew's cleaning the tables down, Drew's wiping the bathrooms. Like, if he, and I'm at the mindset, like, if I can do it, like, you can do it. And so like, they appreciate like the fact that all of their managers are willing to step in and help them when they need it. And it's just not like, oh, like, I'm paying you to be here, so you need to do your job.
So it's about respect.
I believe so, yeah. And trying to build like a good culture to where we have a fun time. Like, when you and Aaron visited, every employee was just excited to be there. Like, our shift leads have told us multiple times, like, I'm so glad I joined this team. Like, our cooks, our nighttime cooks are like, dude, this is so much easier than like the other jobs that we worked. And it's just fun to be around because you guys have that good positive energy around. And I mean, even down to our manager, like Barth does a great job of like uplifting the team. And I mean, yeah.
So what is it about your team? You talked about culture. I think you said that you hired a few out of your temple, and there are folks who probably have the same relative cultural background as you do. But how do you describe your team, Smit, of I mean, gosh, what'd you say, a year and a half or something as your tenure?
Yeah.
That's crazy in the restaurant business. I think most of the folks listening to this are going to give you a phone call and say, how can I do that too? Treating them with respect and working with them, but getting the right people that kind of see the world the same way you do. Seems like maybe you just hired the right people.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Smith.
I mean, we've had a couple employees that basically come in and then they realize that it's not for them. And then early on, they basically go out. But for the people that stayed from like the get-go when we first opened, I believe their intention is to basically help grow with us. We've made it very clear from the get-go, like, hey, we opened during like a bad time, COVID, right in the middle. Be like, hey, stick around, and then basically we're willing to help you guys grow as much as we're growing. It's not like, oh, I want to reap all the profits and then keep it for myself. I'm going to help you guys out as much as we are growing. So basically, we've correlated that in terms of like raises and like pay structure and how everything has gone up since our sales have gone up. I think we started at an average hourly rate of $9.50 when we first opened. And now I think we're at a point where it's $14.50. That's just the base, and then about $3 to $3.50 in tips.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. And it's not all the compensation though, is it?
No. We have other incentives for employees. We have the Starboard. I think you saw it when we came to visit. Basically, if we see any employee that is doing anything above and beyond their main duties for work, they get a star, and then at the end of the month, whoever has the highest amount of stars basically gets a gift card of their choice.
So
you recognize and reward initiative.
Yep. And then
I caught my ear is that your board is about people doing stuff they aren't asked to do.
Yeah.
Let's
say if we have a cashier willing to bounce back and forth between helping in the back and maybe taking customers or giving orders, bagging orders and everything. If we recognize that, we'll hand out a star. Or if a cashier is doing something in the walk-in cooler that they're never taught, but they point it out to a manager or something, we'll notice that and then give them a star here and there.
Wow, we talk about that in training all the time, is how do you recognize when somebody has common sense, initiative, and is motivated to do stuff? I think you've really focused on the motivation being that you're helping them grow, and the initiative, you're recognizing it. If you catch people doing things right,
yep,
that's awesome. And who manages that? Is that your assistant manager or?
So we have a shift lead, assistant manager, and Drew, myself, and Anshu. One of us are usually there. So if it's a shift lead, they'll be responsible for keeping an eye out on employees noticing anything. If the assistant manager is there, he'll notice like small changes that employees are doing and
Yeah.
then reward them with stars.
That's beautiful. Well, let's move off of employees, although I'm sure everyone would love to hear endless stories about employees because that's one of the toughest part of running the business. How
Yep.
about partnership? Okay, it was the two of you and you brought on Anshu as another partner. What are the challenges of partners?
I wouldn't say there's any challenges at the moment. So basically what happened was Drew and I decided to open this, and then Anshu from the get-go, he was like, oh, I would be willing to learn about franchising and all that whatnot. So he was like, hey, how about I commit to working there a couple nights after his day job, so I can get a feel for how franchising works, see how the restaurant business works. I don't think he had experience with the restaurant industry, but he did have a food truck, so he had a little bit more experience than Drew and I did from the get-go. So he was a little aware of how basic like restaurant stuff works. So he started working 4 nights. He would do 6 to close to get his hands-on experience. And then from that, he decided that he would want to join as a partner. In the next 2, we upgraded and got the 3-pack. So we were like, hey, you can become a partner in the next 2 that we open. And then after working on that, our assistant manager, Barth, he's been with us since the first day we opened. So we kind of gave him, so he's been through the whole chain of command. So he first started as an employee. Then he got a raise. He became a shift lead. And then from a shift lead, he got a raise, got a promotion, became an assistant manager. And then now we're giving him another opportunity to go from an assistant manager to become a partner in the next 2 as well.
Okay, great. So, Drew, what do you think the secrets are to good partnerships?
I think it's open communication. Like Anshu and I always have two sets of different ideas. And then whereas Barth and Smit just go along with like whatever one of us says. Unless their idea is better. But I mean, we work out on our communication is best. I think for us, even we all agreed like, hey, we trust each other with like all of our money, but like let's just still, and we were all the first ones to say like, even though we trust everyone like everything, like we trust Bart to run the shop by himself and make sure all the money and stuff is there, all the sales are there. Same with Anshu. We all agreed that it's just better to have everything in writing and like be brutally honest up front and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. At the end of the day, no matter how good of a family, how good of a friendship we have, we should all feel safer knowing that, hey, if anything ever goes wrong, we can just point towards the piece of paper and say, hey, this is what our operating agreement is. This is what our partnership agreement is. Like, let's just have some common sense and just say we're going to go off that. So, because I know we've heard a lot of stories from people like, oh, I went into business with my brother backstabbed me and took all the money, or like whatever the situation was. So we were always up front, and we appreciated both of them to be upfront about it. So, but yeah, communication is making sure everyone's idea is heard, and then like is being okay with like, if your idea is not the one that the group goes with, being okay with like, hey, majority is going to get the vote. So
That's great. Smith, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think he mentioned everything that we've discussed so far.
Yeah, I heard communication, trust, and honesty.
Yep.
And put everything in writing. That's a good one too.
yeah,
That's good. Partnerships are hard. You see them falling apart as much as you see them succeeding.
Yeah, we've heard stories of 3 brothers now from 3 different people that they went into business together, and then later down the road, one screwed the other one up.
Yeah, you hear a lot about somebody buying out the other partner or buying them all up.
Yep.
Okay, so last year we talked about your goal being same store sales growth, which
Yep.
in anybody's book, COVID or no COVID, is a pretty astounding number. I think you guys, what'd you do about? We fell just a little bit short.
Yeah, I think we were about year over year.
That's I think one of the best in the system. So congratulations on that. What did you do?
So last year, we just got our return, our P&L. I think we did,
Yes, you did.
so happy about that.
How'd you get there? So that means you increased it what? Almost,
Yep,
if I'm
it was
doing
like,
my head math right.
I think it was,
That's an enormous jump. How'd you do it?
Catering was the biggest thing.
yep, what Drew said, catering and basically getting the word of mouth out would probably be the biggest factors, seeing that tremendous jump in sales.
Do you think it was all a result of catering, or was it from maybe being around for a little while?
I mean, there's multiple stuff that I would go towards, but catering, if I had to list the top three, I would say catering, COVID going away a little bit. All the businesses around the area, they're having their employees back in the office, so that has helped a lot. So we're getting that lunch rush back in. Before, it used to be only dinner time rushes last year or 2 years ago. Now we're seeing like the full-on lunch effect where the whole dining room will get filled at times.
Yeah, that's great. Drew, were you gonna add something?
Yeah, I think just consistency through the food definitely has helped. Like I've definitely gotten remarks from customers saying like we come here because like we know the certain type of expectations we have from the food, and we know it'll be the same every single time. And that was something that it was very hard to work on in the beginning, because like we had so many different cooks that would cook a different style. Like I remember a customer used to say like, "Oh, it's always different. Like you can tell who cooked the spicy chicken today because like it's always different." And that I took that to like heart. I know the customer wasn't being like mean or anything. They were critiquing us, but I took it to heart. I was like, we should have consistent like quality taste throughout, no matter who is cooking the food. And I think that was the biggest challenge for us. And then once we got that, like every customer was like, yeah, like the food is always consistent when we go there. And just taking care of the customers, like we're not perfect. I mean, we've had times where like I guess our rice would be a little mushy, and then the customer's like, hey, like if it's a regular and they're like, hey, our rice was a little mushy or something like that, they don't even tell us. Like this, I go up and ask them like, hey, how's it going? Um, and they're like, no, it's going well. And I see that they haven't finished the food. I was like, oh, like what happened? Like usually like I was like, I know you're not just gonna eat 2 bites and out of a $10 bowl. Like I know that's not what's going on. So just taking care of them, be like, hey, give me 2 minutes, I'll remake that bowl for you. Let me bring it out to you. And so good customer service has definitely improved. Um, and then yeah, branching out and like trying to make sure wherever your sale, like the days of the week where your sales are low, trying to find those groups that are like meeting. Like for Saturdays for us, I always try to find new car dealerships around the area to be like, hey, like what's your guys' budget per person? If it's reasonable, we'll try and work with them. But like I usually aim for about $7 to $8 a person. And I mean, I'll take the dollar loss for trying to get a $200 300 person order. Or like just $1,000 order from 60 people has been great. We actually got one of the top Mercedes dealerships here that orders every month or once a month since the last, I think, 8 or 9 months. So I think it's like for the year, we got $12,000 from him last year, which was great.
And do you see the sales guys coming in?
Oh yeah, there's a car dealership here that's about 20 minutes away, and at least twice a week they do a big group order, and two of the guys come in and come pick it up.
Yeah. So the catering kind of builds the regular clientele also.
Oh,
Yeah,
for sure.
there's something that caught my ear here is you're out. I'm back in the old days before COVID. We took great pride in everybody coming out and touching tables, talking to
Yeah.
the customers, picking up dirty dishes, maybe even refilling drinks. It sounds like you guys do all three of you guys do that plus your staff?
Yep, we try to.
Yeah, I mean, there's times where it's just too busy.
Yeah, like earlier today, actually, I had a whole family come in, about seven people came in, and I just got too busy. It was the first time I was going through the menu with them. I explained everything to them, and I was gonna go back to the mom and ask her because she paid for it, and I was like, "Hey, how'd everything taste? Like, how'd everything go?" But unfortunately, I wasn't able to. But I think they finished everything, so I think they had a good time.
Yeah. Well, you said it earlier, because you're out there touching tables and talking to your customers, one, that just simply doesn't happen in most fast casual restaurants, certainly doesn't happen in fast food. But you
Yeah.
also can listen and catch if they aren't happy with something that you can
Right.
fix. And most people won't say anything, will they?
Yeah, no, they're usually just like, "Oh, it was great, it was great." I'm like, "No, I mean, be honest. If it's not good, I would love to know."
Yeah, so we can make it right and get you back in.
Exactly.
All right. How about customers? Do you have a bunch of loyal customers? It sounds like you know when they're in there the first time. You can tell just by how they look at the menu, but
All right.
it sounds like you've also built quite the loyal following.
Oh yeah. We
Yeah.
have. Go ahead, Smith.
So even our cashiers now know, like, whenever they see a repeating customer, they know their order, what they're gonna get. So they'll say their name and then they'll say, "Hey, are you doing the usual?" That's basically then the customer is kind of intrigued, like, "Hey, basically, my name, my order. All I have to do is say yes."
It's something that is so rare these days. We go to a restaurant once a week and it's like we've never walked in there before. The employees just act like they have no recognition of us whatsoever. And if we can go into a teriyaki madness and gosh, they even remember my order. That's huge.
Yeah. So we have a full-time cashier that does, like, throughout the week. So it's Monday to Friday. She'll tell you, like, "Hey, that's our usual. Make sure the bowl is right and everything." And she'll come back if so we have this one customer that gets just fried rice, extra egg, but they want like just a pinch of rice. And then they'll get spicy chicken and then add a salmon to it. She knows that order exactly, and then she'll come back and she'll be like, "Hey, that order is for John. Make sure you guys don't fill up the whole bowl with rice."
Is that the craziest order you get?
No, we've seen even crazier orders. So I think one bowl was, um, I would say $28 bowl. It's a large with like 6 proteins on it. Yeah.
That's crazy. All right. So what would you say? Yeah, we've talked about teams, we've talked about customers, we've talked about sales. And by the way, I look every day, but you're off to another big jump this year.
Yeah, I think it's like 32%.
That's, year over year over year over year. If you can do that. And I always tell franchisees, be patient. It's one customer at a time and you just got to keep them coming back. But those are big numbers. Most restaurants are happy if they increase by like 2 or 3%.
Yeah, let's see.
And in
Our
the
goal is
40s
to
and
keep it going,
30s, that just blows me away. Those are great numbers. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I think the next step, we talked last week. You already have 2 or 3 LOIs in.
Correct.
We're going to see some pretty big growth from you guys. We're talking about us helping you find some finance options, but it sounds like you've got the management team in place. It sounds like you've got a team of employees that are ready to branch out and grow. What's the vision over the next 3 to 5 years?
I would say maybe open up 5 or 6 more TMADs. Basically, so we have this brand in Columbus, Baby Bop.
Sure.
They're owned by O'Charlie's, and basically we're trying to follow in their footsteps. They
Yeah.
have 17 or 18 locations that they opened in Columbus within, I think, 4 or 5 years. And they basically have dominated Columbus. Like any customer you see, you ask them Baby Bop, they'll know it. So basically we're trying to mimic that and take market share from them.
Yeah, they do a nice job, but they're super concentrated in your region.
Yep.
I know them well. Okay, so what's your superpower? What's the thing that you do better than perhaps almost anybody else you know that's helped contribute to your success? Whichever one of you wants to go first on that tough question.
I mean, just I know. So there's different ways owners can be successful. For us, for me personally, it's I mean, I take days off, but I still check in with my managers, make sure my team's good, and just making sure like if your team's good and they're and like just making sure they're okay, like even outside of work. Like we've had times where like I've had to pull a shift lead and be like, hey, like what's going on? Like you're normally a lot better than this, and like I can tell something's off. Like you're just not in the mind to like come work today. Like tell me what's going on, and then they'll be like, oh hey, like I'm having issues here. And then just having that sympathetic like time with them goes a long way, because then they come back and like, hey, I can talk to Drew, I can talk to Smith about anything, and they come back and and make sure that your business goes well. Because like when we had to go to the conference, we were pretty short staffed at that time. Our managers were like, dude, guys, just go, we can take care of it here, it's not a big deal. And I think two of them were still in school. They're like, I will try my best to get here before. I mean, our shift leads are, I think, 19 and 20. So they're not that experienced. And basically, outside of school, they don't know how to control or like manage people. But they've done a great job. Like one of our other shift leads was like, I wish I could get the um, respect that Barth and like our first shift lead that we ever promoted get it. And we were like, hey, these are the ways you can do that. Like we sat down with them, like, hey, if you got to demand it, but you got to show up to like meet the standards of the other employees. And so like taking an interest in their life has really helped us. um and then I mean, just making sure your business isn't burnt down when you go. Just making sure, holding people accountable.
Yeah.
Like Barth will hold Unshu, myself, and Smith accountable if we close the night and something's wrong. So just having that level of respect and saying like, hey, everyone is accountable. Like doesn't, just because you're the owner doesn't mean you get a pass on like the night close was bad, but then you just didn't care and didn't do it right because you know your manager's opening. And then our manager gives us, I mean, he gives it to us. He'll be like, hey, why wasn't this and this done? Like, can you please explain? And then just holding everyone to the same standard, no matter where their rank is a good one for us.
So take care of your team and they'll take care of you.
Exactly.
Great. Well, that's that being a people person and being a good personnel manager is a superpower. How about you, Smith?
It's a tough question.
You
I
can
would
be, you don't have to be humble right now.
I would say I don't really have that kind of a superpower where I try to rank myself like in line with all my employees. Basically, try to be compassionate with all the employees.
Have some empathy.
Yep.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's why because you identify so much with the team, you've had that team in place for so long. Why would you fire someone? You hold them accountable. So I guess the easy answer is they aren't doing their job, but what's a fireable offense?
Well, we haven't really had to fire. I would say maybe we fired 2 people since we've opened. One being very recent, which that one was, I don't know. It was so an employee basically on their way out, they were like, "Oh, if I find out that you guys are not paying me right or whatever, I'm gonna come here and shoot this place up."
Wow.
So yeah, she was 17, so that was one employee that we had to fire.
She didn't understand the power of her words.
Yep. So basically, whenever we reached out to her later, she was like, "Oh, you guys know I was just joking." I was like, "Well, nowadays you can't joke like that. We got to take it seriously."
Sounds like she didn't fit the culture.
Yeah, I would say so.
for me, I fired one person, and it was only because we had communicated to the person, hey, like, we need you on a one particular Sunday. They're like, hey, I need Sundays off. I was like, that's totally fine. This particular Sunday I will need you to come in, and it was communicated. Like, I have a 2-week policy where, like, if you need something, just let me know 2 weeks in advance. Even if it's if it's last minute, I'll try my best to work with you. But like, she blatantly said no, I will be she's like, all the way up until Wednesday she was like, I'll work, I'll work. And then Wednesday night, I believe that was a night where she was like, yeah, I'm just not coming in, and if you try to call me, I'm going to block your number. And so I just told her, I was like, you can pack up your stuff and go. Like, that's not an issue with me. I can work that Sunday. So it wasn't, I was like, you're not going to disrespect how we, or take advantage of how we treat everyone here and how my policies are, or how our policies are.
Yeah, and by firing her, you're respecting all the employees who will say yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, luckily we haven't had to fire any, like, nothing crazy. But yeah, those are the two craziest stories that we've had.
Okay.
To summarize, I would probably say it's basically about attitude. They don't have the right attitude. Like, if they don't want to be at work and they're acting like we're forcing them to come to work and whatnot, that's just probably not a good fit.
Makes everybody's life miserable.
Yep, you got to bring positive energy to the work environment.
Not
to have
good.
fun at work.
That's great advice. So what is one piece of advice to kind of finish up here that you would tell the other franchisees, the new folks getting into the business? What should their expectations be, or what's some secret that it took you a little while to figure out?
Well, on all my calls that I have with franchisees, potential franchisees, the one advice that I always give them is make sure you have your real estate. You've done like your due diligence on the real estate you pick, because in the end, that will be your make it or break it.
Yeah, that's good advice. That's why we've got such a big team, making sure that we're applying all the analytics. How about you, Drew?
For us in the beginning, it was making sure you realize what brand you're in. I was always trying to get the food, like, I would stress out if the food took longer than 8 minutes. Like, and I think that came back to where we were not part of we never had restaurant experience before. So I kept forgetting that we're not a fast food place. And I'm like, guys, it's been 10 minutes. Like, why is this bowl not out? Where we have like 20 to 30 tickets. I'm like, guys, get this bowl out. Like, what's taking so long? But yeah, like Smith said, I always tell also the people I talk to, potential franchisees, I say real estate, and always try to pick a spot where, or like a location that will have a lot of catering, because catering is definitely one of the best keys to success here. Because we've definitely seen it where before we open, we have $1,200, $1,500 catering done, and we're like, great, that covered all of my, like, I'm at 5% labor. That's going to cover my whole, like, payroll, or my labor for the day. Now it's just whatever customers walk in and make our sales. Like, that's just going to go straight to us. Um, and then, I mean, biggest challenge is, like, make sure you're checking in. Like, yes, you can have a great team around, but they got to know, like, hey, I am still here, or like the boss is still here, and like, to pay attention to your business. Don't think it's just like, I'm going to hire a manager and it's going to be okay. Because unless you're not there every other day, or if you're not even checking in, your business is not going to succeed.
No, I agree with that. I call it delegation, not abdication.
Correct.
You can't just throw your hands up and walk away, no matter what it is.
Yep. So to add on to that, I would say basically when we first signed on, our intent was to work in the restaurant legit full time, since we didn't have any restaurant experience before. So we wanted to learn what it takes A to Z to be successful in the restaurant industry. That's why from the get-go, we didn't hire a manager or anything. Drew and I were going to basically be the managers.
That's a great piece of advice. I always think that owners should know how to do absolutely everything,
Yep.
even if their intention is that they're not going to be in the restaurant in the long term.
Yep. So
Okay. Oh, nope, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so we basically did the year of that, and then now we know how to, now our mindset is focused on growth. So now we can put this shop and put it on autopilot while we focus on setting up 2, 3, 4, whatever shops down the road.
Perfect. Well, gentlemen, thank you for taking the time. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. Typically, I think the franchisees who publish these interviews get a few phone calls and a few emails.
Sure.
You guys open to that?
Yep.
Sounds like you have that. Your superpower is the team. The amount of turnover you don't have, and it sounds like your team is taking care of you, so you don't have to be in there every minute of the day. That's, I think, what most of us are working towards.
Yep, I would agree.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us, Michael.
Thanks, Michael.